Once upon a time, in a small, quiet village surrounded by dark, ancient forests, there lived a man named Elias. Elias was known for his kindness and his deep love for his wife, Lila. Their bond was unshakable, and they were the heart of each other's worlds. But life has a way of unraveling even the strongest threads, and one fateful day, Lila suffered a sudden heart attack and passed away. Elias was shattered. The world seemed colder, emptier without her laughter and warmth. Unable to bear the emptiness of their home, he began a ritual. Every night, after darkness had settled over the village, Elias would make his way to the cemetery on the outskirts of the forest where Lila was buried. The cemetery was notorious for being treacherous and eerie, a place whispered about in fearful tones by the villagers. They spoke of strange sounds and ominous shadows that seemed to move of their own accord. But Elias cared nothing for the rumors. His only concern was Lila's grave, where he would sit, share his thoughts, and imagine she was still there, listening. One moonless night, as the wind howled through the twisted trees, Elias walked the familiar path to the cemetery. He carried a lantern, its dim light flickering with every gust of wind. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. As he reached Lila's grave, he knelt down and whispered, "I miss you more with each passing day, my love." Unbeknownst to Elias, someone else had entered the cemetery that night. A man named Victor, a curious traveler passing through the village, had heard tales of the haunted graveyard. Intrigued and skeptical, he decided to see it for himself. Armed with a torch and a knife for protection, Victor made his way through the gates and into the heart of the cemetery. As Victor wandered among the graves, he spotted the faint glow of Elias's lantern in the distance. At first, he thought it was another adventurer like himself, but as he drew closer, he noticed Elias sitting motionless by a grave, his face obscured by the shadows. Victor approached cautiously, his footsteps crunching on the gravel path. "Hello," he called out. "Who's there?" Elias turned his head slowly, startled by the voice. "I'm just visiting someone I love," he replied softly. Victor stepped closer, but before he could say another word, a deep rumble echoed through the cemetery. The ground trembled. The air grew colder, and an unnatural silence fell over the night. Then, from the depths of the shadows, they emerged. Towering figures, their skin as gray and rough as stone, with glowing red eyes and jagged teeth. Giants, creatures of legend, thought to have vanished centuries ago, rose from the earth like vengeful spirits. Elias and Victor froze, their breaths caught in their throats. One of the giants let out a deafening roar that shook the very trees. It raised an enormous hand and brought it crashing down, narrowly missing Victor, who dived out of the way. "Run!" Elias shouted, grabbing Victor by the arm. The two men sprinted through the cemetery, dodging tombstones and fallen branches. The giants gave chase, their heavy footsteps shaking the ground. "What are they?" Victor gasped as they ran. "I don't know," Elias shouted back. "But we have to get out of here." The giants were relentless, their glowing eyes piercing through the darkness. Elias's lantern flickered and finally went out, leaving them in near total darkness. They stumbled and fell, but somehow, they managed to reach the cemetery gates. As they crossed the threshold, the giants stopped abruptly, as if an invisible barrier held them back. They roared in frustration, their cries echoing into the night before they sank back into the shadows. Panting and shaken, Elias and Victor collapsed on the ground just outside the gates. "What were those things?" Victor asked again, his voice trembling. Elias shook his head. "I don't know. But I've come here every night, and they've never appeared before. Maybe they're drawn to something new." He looked pointedly at Victor. Victor nodded slowly, understanding. "I think it's best if I leave this village," he said, his voice heavy with unease. Elias watched as Victor disappeared into the night, leaving him alone once more. He turned back to the cemetery, his heart aching with grief but also with newfound fear. For the first time, he hesitated to return to Lila's grave. But as the sun began to rise, casting light over the tombstones, Elias made a silent vow. No matter the danger, he would continue to visit her. Love, he realized, was worth even the gravest of risks.